The first indication that something was wrong did not come from alarms or weapon warnings. It came from silence. The command chamber of the Aurelian Dominion's forward observation platform was never quiet. Even in deep space, even far from any inhabited system, the station hummed with layered activity. Data streams whisper across translucent displays. Officers spoke in clipped, efficient tones. Sensors updated every fraction of a second, tracking thousands of known and unknown objects across the sector. But now, one of those voices had stopped. Senior Sensor Adept Velric stared at his console, his elongated fingers frozen above the input surface. The flow of information had not ceased, yet one channel had gone eerily blank. Not distorted, not jammed, simply empty. Report, Commander Shale said without turning. His attention remained fixed on the panoramic viewport, where the distant star burned with steady indifference. Velric swallowed. Long-range gravimetric sweep just registered an anomaly, Commander. Then the signal collapsed. That is not a report, Shale replied calmly. That is confusion. Clarify. Velric forced himself to breathe evenly. There was a mass displacement at the edge of detection range, larger than any civilian vessel, larger than most warships. Then nothing. No residual wake. No radiation trail. Several officers glanced toward him now. That is impossible, Tactical Officer Wren said. Any vessel that size would leave a signature. Velric nodded slowly. That is what our models predict. Shale finally turned. His crested head tilted slightly, a gesture of measured interest rather than concern. Run the scan again. I already have. 3 times. And the anomaly persists only as an absence, Velric said, as if something very large is occupying space without interacting with it. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Shale raised one clawed hand, and the sound died instantly. Project it, he ordered. The main display shifted. The familiar star field appeared, overlaid with sensor grids and probability markers. At first glance, nothing seemed out of place. Then Shale saw it. A void, not empty space, but a shape carved out of detection itself. A dark silhouette defined not by what was seen, but by what was missing. Stars behind it dimmed slightly, their light bending in subtle, unnatural arcs. Wren leaned forward. That outline, it's enormous. Estimate, Shale said. Velric hesitated. If the mass readings are accurate, Commander, it exceeds our largest battleships by a factor 3. Silence returned to the chamber, heavier this time. Identify origin, Shale said. Velric's fingers moved quickly. No match in Dominion records. No known empire uses a design philosophy like this. The geometry is crude, asymmetrical, excessively reinforced. Primitive, Wren scoffed automatically. Perhaps an unregistered industrial platform. Shale studied the shape more closely. The vessel did not glide or maneuver like Dominion ships. It simply was. Immovable. Unconcerned. Primitive structures do not bend starlight, Shale said quietly. As if responding to his words, the void shifted. Space itself seemed to peel back, and the silhouette resolved into substance. The battleship emerged without flourish. No burst of energy. No violent transition. One moment there was absence. The next there was presence. It was colossal. Layer upon layer of armored plating covered its surface. Scarred and uneven, as though added over centuries rather than designed at once. Massive protrusions ran along its spine, housing systems far larger than necessary by Dominion standards. Redundancy upon redundancy, built not for elegance, but survival. What is that? Someone whispered. Velric's console erupted with cascading alerts. Commander, power readings are stabilizing. I repeat, stabilizing. This ship is not drawing energy spikes. It is operating at a constant baseline far above our maximum output. Wren's mandibles twitched. No vessel sustains that level of power continuously. This one does, Velric said, voice tight. Shale felt a faint pressure at the base of his skull, an instinct older than training. The realization crept in slowly, unwelcome but undeniable. This ship was not scouting. It was not posturing. It had arrived exactly where it intended to be. Open identification channel. Shale ordered. Standard diplomatic frequency. No response. Broadcast in all known languages. Still nothing. The human ship did not maneuver, did not acknowledge them. It simply loomed, its presence dominating the starfield. "Commander," Velric said softly. Secondary scans indicate internal compartments numbering in the thousands. Multiple command cores. Independent power grids. If one system fails, another compensates instantly. Rin frowned. That is grossly inefficient. Shale did not reply. His eyes were fixed on a new readout forming on the edge of the display. Weapon ports. Not sleek emitters or refine arrays, but reinforced apertures built to withstand extreme stress. Dozens of them. Hundreds. And behind them, mass drivers of a scale Shale had never seen. "They're kinetic," Velric said, disbelief creeping into his tone. "Not energy-based." Rin laughed once, sharp and nervous. "Kinetic weapons? In space? Against shielding?" The laugh died when the projection updated. Trajectory calculations appeared unprompted on their screens. Not targeting data. Demonstration data. The human battleship adjusted its orientation by a fraction of a degree. The movement was slow, deliberate, almost respectful. One weapon port opened. "No energy spike," Velrix whispered. "No charge sequence." The projectile launched without light or sound. Across the system, a dead moon shattered. Not exploded. Not cracked. Shattered. The kinetic strike passed through its core and exited the far side before the rock could respond to the violence done to it. Debris expanded outward in a silent, horrifying bloom. Every officer in the chamber froze. That distance," Rin stammered. "That wasn't even within effective weapons range." Shale finally understood. This was not a threat display. This was a warning scaled down to avoid annihilation. A transmission signal activated. This time it was not theirs. A single channel opened, clean and unencrypted. A calm voice filled the chamber, translated instantly. "This is the human battleship Resolute," it said. "You are observing us because we allowed it." Shale straightened slowly. "For the sake of clarity," the voice continued, "we recommend you do not attempt a second scan." The channel closed. The human ship did not move. But in that moment, as Shale stared at the wreckage of the moon still dispersing across space, he understood something with terrible certainty. This was not the beginning of a conflict. This was the moment they realized they had already lost. The chamber remained motionless long after the transmission ended. No one spoke. No one breathed loudly enough to be noticed. The drifting fragments of the destroyed moon continued to scatter across the tactical display, each piece a quiet reminder that distance no longer meant safety. Commander Shale was the first to move. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered himself into the command seat. His posture remained composed, but the stillness was no longer confidence. It was calculation. "Status," he said. Velrix's hands trembled as he steadied them against the console. "All passive sensors are functioning. Active scans have been suspended per recommendation." Rin bristled at the word. "Recommendation?" "They issued a command." "They issued advice," Shale corrected, "and demonstrated the cost of ignoring it." Rin's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Commander, this is a forward platform of the Aurelian Dominion. We observe, we catalog, we report. We do not retreat because an unknown vessel flexes its weapons." Shale did not look at him. "You mistake what occurred." Rin leaned forward. "They destroyed an uninhabited rock." A theatrical gesture. "No," Shale replied quietly. "They destroyed it to show restraint. That silenced the chamber more effectively than any shout." Velrix pulled up additional data streams. "Commander, I am detecting signal echoes across subspace bands we do not actively monitor. The human vessel is not alone." Rin snapped his gaze toward the display. "You said there were no other contacts." "There were none we could see," Velrix said. "There still aren't, but the echoes suggest observers." Shale closed his eyes briefly. "They arrived openly because they wished to be seen. The others did not." A junior officer shifted uneasily. Are we inside a formation? Velrix hesitated. I cannot confirm, but if their technology allows concealment at this scale. Shale opened his eyes. Then yes, we are. Rin straightened. Commander, with respect, we cannot assume hostile intent from silence. Perhaps this is first contact protocol, an attempt at deterrence. Deterrence is used by the weak, Shale replied. This was instruction. The human battleship remained fixed in place, its vast hull absorbing starlight without reflection. It did not track them. It did not adjust position. It behaved as if the Dominion platform were a constant in the universe, no more noteworthy than the stars behind it. That ship doesn't see us as a threat, Velrix said softly. It doesn't see us at all. Shale's gaze hardened. That is precisely the problem. A new signal alert pulsed gently across the console, devoid of urgency or aggression. An incoming transmission request. Diplomatic frequency. Same channel as before. Shale inhaled slowly. Put it through. The voice returned, identical in tone, as calm as vacuum. We note your compliance, it said. That was wise. Rin clenched his claws. You issued an order without authority. The human voice paused, just long enough to feel deliberate. We issued information, it replied. You acted on it. Shale raised one hand, silencing Rin. You destroyed a celestial body within our monitored sector. That constitutes a violation of sovereign observation space. Another pause. That body was unclaimed, the voice said, and it remained so. Shale felt something cold settle in his core. You calculated that response in advance. Yes. To what end? Shale asked. To prevent misunderstanding. Rin scoffed. By demonstrating overwhelming force. No, the human replied. By demonstrating proportion. Velrix whispered. They could have erased us. The voice continued, as if hearing him. Correct. Shale straightened. Then state your purpose. The stars behind the battleship shifted subtly as the ship rotated a fraction, aligning itself more directly with the platform. Our purpose is observation, the voice said. Yours was the same. Rin's eyes narrowed. You could have observed without announcing yourself. Yes, the human said, but then you would have learned slowly. Shale understood before the words finished forming. You wanted us to learn immediately. Yes. What lesson? Shale asked. That the galaxy has changed. A ripple of unease moved through the chamber. Shale chose his next words carefully. You are human. Yes. A species categorized as pre-expansionary, technologically uneven, politically fragmented. The voice did not object. You allowed those classifications to stand? Shale said. Yes. Why? Another pause, longer this time. Because no one asked the right question. Rin barked a bitter laugh. And what question is that? The human voice lowered, not in volume, but in gravity. What happens when a species stops optimizing for elegance and starts optimizing for survival? Shale felt the answer settle like a weight. You built this ship, he said, to endure. We built it to remain, the voice replied. Conflict is optional. Continuity is not. Velrix stared at the data. Commander, their ship is not broadcasting command hierarchy. No central vulnerability. No singular core. Rin swallowed. You can't decapitate something that doesn't have a head. The human voice spoke again. We are not here to conquer, it said. We are here because others will come. Louder ones. Faster ones. Hungrier ones. Shale's eyes narrowed. And you expect us to what? Step aside? We expect you to remember this moment, the voice said. When you decide how to respond to those who arrive after us. And if we choose incorrectly? Rin demanded. The battleship's weapon ports remain closed. You won't, the human replied calmly. You've already demonstrated that. The transmission ended. The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy with realization. Shale rose from his seat. Transmit full priority report to the Dominion High Council. Rin hesitated. Commander, how do we classify them? Shale stared at the human battleship one last time. As a constant, he said, and a warning, outside the viewport, the Resolute remained motionless, waiting. The High Council chamber of the Aurelian Dominion was built to inspire certainty. Its vaulted arcs of light-responsive crystal rose high above the assembled counselors, reflecting their bioluminescent crests in disciplined symmetry. Every line, every surface, spoke a control refined over millennia. That illusion fractured the moment Commander Shale's report concluded. Silence held for several heartbeats before it broke into overlapping voices. Disbelief layered atop disbelief. "A single vessel," Counselor Merritt said sharply. "You expect us to accept that one human ship posed a strategic concern?" Shale stood, unmoving at the center of the chamber. "I expect you to accept that it poses strategic reality." Counselor Veteran's tendrils curled in agitation. "Humans are not an expansion tier species. Their industrial output alone is irrelevant," Shale interrupted, carefully but firmly. "This is not a matter of scale. It is a matter of approach." A projection bloomed above the chamber, replaying sensor data of the shattered moon. The fragments expanded endlessly, silent proof that distance, armor, and doctrine had failed simultaneously. High Strategist Kale leaned forward. "Explain the weapon again." Velrix, standing beside Shale, activated the analysis. The projectile carried no exotic energy signature, no unstable matter, no exotic fields. It was mass, accelerated to near-relativistic velocity. A ripple of disbelief moved through the council. "That is barbaric," Mara scoffed. "Inefficient." "Yes," Velrix agreed. "And unstoppable." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Our shields are tuned for energy dispersion. And there's ignore energy entirely," Velrix said. "They bend space itself." The projectile never interacted with the shield. It arrived already past it. Murmurs turned uneasy. Counselor Rail spoke quietly. "Why reveal such a capability?" Shale answered, "Because concealment was no longer necessary." Veteran snorted. "You suggest they hid this level of advancement deliberately?" "Yes." "Why?" Merritt demanded. Shale met the counselor's gaze. "Because we classify civilizations based on what they display, not what they reserve." Kale exhaled slowly. "They optimize for endurance, not dominance." "And for patience," Shale added. The chamber fell silent again. "What do they want?" Rail asked. Shale hesitated. They did not ask for anything. That unsettled them more than any demand. "Then why appear now?" Merith pressed. Shale turned as a new signal alert echoed through the chamber. A secure priority channel opened without request, routed through Dominion Command protocols as if they had always been there. The human voice returned, calm as before. "You are discussing us," it said. Several counselors recoiled instinctively. Kale rose slowly. "You breached sovereign channels." "No," the voice replied. "You left them open." Shale felt a chill. They had not forced entry. They had simply used the architecture. This council governs a multi-system dominion. Kale said, "State your intent." The projection shifted. The human battleship appeared again, but now it was contextualized within a wider map. Lines extended outward, marking trajectories of unknown vectors. "You are not alone in being observed," the voice said. "You are simply the first to notice." Rail stiffened. "Observed by whom?" "By those who do not announce themselves," the human replied. "Those who see your dominion as potential resource." Mara scoffed. "We have repelled invaders for centuries." "Yes," the voice agreed. "You repel those who arrive loudly." The projection zoomed outward. Shadowed regions appear across the map, areas where data blurred and probability models failed. "These are not empires," the voice continued. "They are consumption networks." Velrix whispered, "Void harvesters." "Names are unimportant," the human said. "Outcomes are not." Kale folded his hands. "And humanity positions itself where in this equation?" The human voice did not answer immediately. "When they arrive, it said, 'Finally, we will stand.'" Merith hissed, "And expect us to shelter behind you?" "No," the human replied. We expect you to decide. Decide what? Rail asked. Whether elegance is still worth extinction. The chamber erupted. You presume authority over our future? Mara snapped. No, the voice said. We presume inevitability. Shale felt the weight of the words settle across the chamber. You built redundancy, Shale said quietly. You planned for loss. Yes. And these others? Shale asked. They optimize for efficiency, the voice replied. They will break when disrupted. Kale's gaze sharpened. And you? We fracture, the human said, and continue. Silence returned, deeper than before. What do you want from us? Kale asked. The projection shifted again. This time it showed schematics. Dominion technology overlaid with human modifications. Reinforced structures. Distributed systems. Inelegant. Resilient. We are offering you time, the voice said, and perspective. By terrifying us? Merritt demanded. No, the human replied. By being honest. Rail leaned forward. If we refuse, then you will do what you have always done, the voice said, and learn the hard way. Kale closed his eyes briefly. You assume we will trust you. No, the human said. We assume you will verify. The channel paused. We will remain in this sector, the voice continued. We will not interfere with your operations. But when the others arrive, you will remember this conversation. And if we choose to oppose you? Merith asked. The human voice was unchanged. Then you will discover why we build our ships to survive first contact. The channel closed. No one spoke. Shale broke the silence. They are not asking for allegiance. Kale nodded slowly. They are offering a mirror. Meritha's voice was quiet now. And if we do not like what we see? Shale looked at the frozen image of the human battleship. Then, he said, we're already too late. Outside the council chamber, beyond politics and pride, the Resolute waited, not as a threat, but as a measure of what came next. The Aurelian Dominion did not mobilize its fleets immediately. That alone marked how deeply the encounter had cut. In earlier eras, uncertainty was answered with force, hesitation with demonstration. Now, for the first time in recorded Dominion history, restraint was not imposed by confidence, but by doubt. Weeks passed. The human battleship Resolute remained exactly where it had arrived. It did not patrol. It did not drift. It did not anchor itself to any gravitational well. It existed as the space itself had adjusted to accommodate it. Dominion observers cataloged every micron of its hull, every thermal fluctuation, every quantum echo. The data painted a picture that grew more unsettling with each pass. The ship aged, not decayed, not degraded. It aged like a structure meant to persist. Microscopic repairs occurred constantly across its surface, autonomous systems reinforcing stress points before failure occurred. Damage that would require dry dock refit on a Dominion vessel was resolved internally without interrupting function. It treats entropy as a variable, Velric said during one briefing. Not a threat. Shale stood before the projection, arms folded behind him. And its crew? Unknown, Velric replied. Life sign readings fluctuate, sometimes thousands, sometimes far fewer. Compartments rearrange internally. Modular habitation, Rin muttered. They can lose half the ship and still operate. That appears intentional, Velric said, beyond the battleship. Faint distortions continued to appear and vanish across the sector. The suspected observers never revealed themselves, but their presence grew harder to deny. Something was moving along the edges of Dominion space, probing reactions, cataloging responses. The humans did nothing. They are letting us watch them watch us, Rin said bitterly. Shale shook his head. No, they are letting us choose. The first Dominion system to feel the pressure was Ord's Reach. Long-range monitoring arrays there began reporting resource depletion patterns that did not align with natural phenomena. Entire asteroid clusters vanished between scans, stripped with surgical efficiency. No debris fields. No energy signatures. Just absence. Void harvesters, the analyst confirmed. Consumption networks. The High Council reconvened an emergency session. This is exactly what the humans warned us about. Counselor Rail said, "They are already here." Marith slammed a claw against the floor. "Then we strike first, mobilize, show strength, and reveal ourselves fully?" Kale countered, "To entities that specialize in consumption?" Marith hissed, "We cannot cower behind human shadows." "We are not," Kale replied. "We are adapting." The argument fractured along familiar lines. Tradition versus survival. Elegance versus redundancy. Shale listened without speaking. When the chamber quieted, Kale turned to him. "Commander, your assessment." Shale stepped forward. "The humans did not intervene at Orda's reach." Mara scoffed. "So much for their warnings." "No," Shale said. "So much for our assumptions." He gestured to projection. "The consumption networks are studying us. If the humans acted, it would signal alliance, escalation. They are waiting to see how we respond. And if we fail?" Rail asked. Shale's voice was steady. "Then they will act alone." Silence fell. Meritha's voice dropped. "And if they act alone, what does that make us?" Shale did not answer. The first direct encounter occurred 48 hours later. A Dominion patrol group vanished near the edge of Orda's reach. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Gone. Their last transmission contained only static and a single, distorted sensor frame. A void, folding inward. Panic rippled across the Dominion. Emergency signals flooded command channels. Civilian systems began evacuations. Military assets redeployed hastily. Formations breaking discipline in their urgency. Through it all, the Resolute remained still, until it moved. Without warning, the battleship shifted orientation. Space bent, not violently, but decisively. It did not accelerate so much as reposition itself, crossing distances that would take Dominion vessels days in the span of moments. It emerged directly between Orda's reach and the advancing void mass. For the first time since its arrival, the Resolute powered weapons. No alarm screamed. No radiation surged. The ship's mass drivers aligned, not toward the void, but around it, projecting a lattice of trajectories. "What are they doing?" Rin whispered. Varix's console lit, with impossible mathematics. "They're not firing at it. They're firing where it will be." The first kinetic strike did not hit the void. It struck space. Reality rippled. The consumption network recoiled, its structure destabilizing as the gravitational environment collapsed around it. Layers peeled away, revealing a vast, asymmetrical construct never meant to be seen. The humans fired again, and again. Each strike rewrote the battlefield, tearing pathways through which the void entity could neither advance nor retreat. It tried to adapt, to consume, to optimize. The Resolute anticipated every change. Within minutes, the void collapsed inward, its mass folding into itself under stresses it could not distribute. Then it was gone. No explosion, no debris, just absence, replaced by stabilized space. Across Dominion channels, stunned silence reigned. The human voice opened a broadcast, this time to all frequencies. "This is why we waited," it said. "Now you have context." Shale felt something shift inside him. Not fear. Relief. "You could have stopped it earlier," Mara said bitterly over the channel. "Yes," the human replied. "But then you would have learned nothing." Kale's voice was quiet. "You fought it alone." "Yes. And if there were more?" Kale asked. "There are," the human said. "Many more." Silence. "What happens now?" Rail asked. The Resolute powered down its weapons. Now, the human said, "You decide whether you want to survive as you are or evolve." Shale looked at the counselors, at the crumbling certainty in their posture, at the fractured elegance of a Dominion built for a different age. He knew the answer before anyone spoke. The galaxy had already changed. The only question left was whether the Dominion would change with it. The Dominion did not announce its decision publicly. Empires rarely did. Change, when it came, was wrapped in procedure, disguised as routine, buried beneath layers of continuity, so the population could believe nothing fundamental had shifted. But within the High Council chamber, no one pretended anymore. Kale stood at the center of the circular hall, his crest dimmer than usual. Around him, counselors reviewed projections that no longer inspired confidence. The data from Orta's Reach replayed endlessly, each simulation confirming the same conclusion. Without the humans, the Dominion would already be diminished. Meredith broke the silence. We cannot rebuild our doctrine around them. Kale turned slowly. We already have. That battle was an anomaly, Meredith insisted. A single engagement. A single lesson, Kale replied, repeated until understood. Rail's voice was softer. Our fleets are optimized for known adversaries. The consumption networks are not adversaries. They are processes. Shale, standing near the periphery, spoke for the first time. And processes are disrupted by redundancy, not refinement. Several counselors looked toward him sharply. You echo human philosophy, Meredith said. Shale met his gaze. I echo survival. The chamber's central projection shifted, now displaying comparative schematics. Dominion warships, sleek and precise, contrasted against human vessels layered in armor, systems branching outward like living organisms. Our ships fail cleanly, Velrich explained. Single points of excellence, single points of failure. And theirs, Rail asked. Fail slowly, Velrich replied, and rarely all at once. Meredith exhaled sharply. You propose we abandon millennia of design heritage? Kale's voice was steady. I propose we outlive it. The decision was not unanimous. It never was. But when the vote concluded, the outcome was undeniable. The Dominion would adapt. The first step was communication. A priority channel opened, directed toward the Resolute. For the first time, the signal carried no posturing, no coded assertion of authority. This is High Strategist Kale of the Aurelian Dominion, he said. We request dialogue. The response was immediate. Request acknowledged. The human voice replied. Proceed. Kale straightened. You warned us. You demonstrated. You withheld intervention until necessary. Yes, the human said. We wish to understand your methods, Kale continued. Not your weapons. Your thinking. A pause followed. Not hesitation. Consideration. That will require discomfort, the human said. Kale inclined his head. So does extinction. The Resolute adjusted position, aligning more directly with the Dominion platform. Not threatening. Intentional. We will share principles, the human said, not blueprints. Agreed. Kale replied immediately. Shale felt tension ease across the chamber. This was not surrender. It was something more dangerous. Learning. Overfollowing cycles. Exchanges began. Not lectures. Not demonstrations of superiority. Conversations. The human spoke of constraints embraced rather than eliminated, of systems designed to degrade gracefully, of doctrines built around the assumption that first contact would go wrong. We plan for failure, the human explained, because failure is inevitable. And victory? Rail asked during one session. The human voice was calm. Victory is survival plus time. Dominion engineers struggled most. Their instincts recoiled at inefficiency, at redundancy that seemed wasteful, at structures deliberately overbuilt beyond optimal parameters. This is inelegant, one senior architect protested. Yes, the human replied, and it still works when elegant solutions break. Shale observed quietly, absorbing more than he spoke. He noticed something others missed. The humans never claimed supremacy. They never declared themselves guardians. They spoke as if they expected to be wrong eventually. They assumed something worse will come, Shale said privately to Kale. Kale nodded, and they are preparing anyway. That assumption proved correct sooner than expected. A second consumption network emerged near the fringe of Dominion space. Larger, more diffuse. It did not advance directly. It spread, testing responses, cataloging resistance. Dominion fleets mobilized, this time differently. Instead of tight formations, they dispersed. Instead of centralized command, they distributed control. Instead of precision strikes, They layered disruption. The Resolute did not lead. It observed. The first engagement was chaotic. Dominion ships took damage. Systems failed. Formations fractured, but they did not collapse. Redundant command nodes took over. Damaged vessels continued firing with partial capability. Losses were absorbed without cascading failure. The consumption network adapted, then stalled. Human kinetic strikes arrived only when necessary, targeting not mass, but behavior, predictive nodes, optimization cores. Within hours, the network destabilized and withdrew, leaving behind distorted space and incomplete consumption patterns. The Dominion fleet held. Across command channels, something unfamiliar spread. Confidence, not arrogance. Capability. Meredith watched the aftermath in silence. When he finally spoke, his voice lacked its former edge. We survived. Shale nodded. And learned. Kale turned toward the projection of the Resolute. You could have ended this faster. Yes, the human replied. Why didn't you? Kale asked. Because dependence is another form of extinction, the human said. We will not be your solution. The words carried weight. Rail exhaled slowly. Then what are you? A pause. We are a reference point, the human said. A reminder that paths diverge. Shale felt the truth of it settle deeply. The Dominion had not been saved. It had been challenged. And in that challenge, something long stagnant had begun to move again. Outside, beyond politics and doctrine, beyond fear and pride, the galaxy continued to shift. The Resolute remained nearby, not as a shield, not as a master, but as proof that survival favored those willing to rethink everything they believed permanent. Change never announced itself with ceremony. It crept in through necessity, disguised as temporary measures, justified as emergency responses. Within a single cycle, Dominion Shipyard began producing vessels that would have been rejected outright only months earlier. They were heavier, slower, ugly. Layers of armor overlapped at irregular angles. Power conduits ran in parallel rather than sequence. Command systems duplicated themselves, then triplicate, then isolated from one another entirely. Meredith watched one such vessel take shape from the observation gallery, his crest flickering uneasily. It looks unfinished. Velrix shook his head. It looks prepared. Shale stood beside them, silent. He could feel the discomfort radiating through the engineers below. Every instinct they possessed screamed that this was wrong. Wasteful, inefficient, heretical. Yet the simulations told a different story. The first of the new designs, designated Continuance Class, survived scenarios that annihilated traditional Dominion ships in seconds. They limped. They degraded. They lost subsystems and compartments. They did not die. Failure no longer propagates. Velrix said during the briefing, it stalls. Meredith folded his arms. And victory? Shale answered, victory arrives later. But it arrives. The humans observed quietly, offering no corrections unless asked. When they did speak, it was never to praise. That section is too centralized, the human voice said once. You'll lose it early. And if we decentralize further, we lose efficiency. An engineer protested. Yes, the human replied. You'll lose that too. The engineer stared at the projection in frustration. Then what remains? Choice, the human said. As Dominion doctrine shifted, so did perception across the wider galaxy. Other powers noticed. Surveillance probes lingered longer at Dominion borders. Diplomatic inquiries increased, layered with thinly veiled concern. What happened at Orda's Reach? Asked a neighboring polity's envoy. Your fleet behavior has changed. Kale's response was measured. We learned. Rumors spread faster than confirmation. Whispers of humans, of battleships that bent space, of consumption networks shattered without spectacle. Some empires scoffed. Others began reinforcing quietly. The third encounter came without warning. No gradual depletion. No probing advance. The consumption network emerged already embedded within a populated system on the Dominion's outer spiral. Civilian habitats went dark one by one, their matter harvested with terrifying efficiency. Panic erupted. Evacuation corridors clogged. Command channels flooded with conflicting orders. For a moment, the old Dominion resurfaced, instinctively reaching for centralized control. Then Shale intervened. "Decentralize response authority," he ordered. Immediately, Mareth hesitated. "That risks fragmentation." "Yes," Shale said, "but fragmentation survives." The fleet split into autonomous clusters, each operating under mission principles rather than direct command. Communication delays increased. Coordination suffered. Adaptation accelerated. The consumption network reacted, shifting behavior, reoptimizing its approach to absorb the new variables. Too late, Dominion ships disrupted space not by targeting the entity itself, but by destabilizing the environment it relied upon. Power grids overloaded intentionally. Gravitational fields were collapsed asymmetrically. It was messy, effective. Human kinetic fire arrived only once, precise and limited, severing a key structural node the Dominion had identified but lacked the means to exploit. The network unraveled, withdrawing fragment of itself into deep void. Casualties were heavy, but the system lived. Across the Dominion, something unfamiliar occurred. Celebration, not of conquest, of endurance. Shale stood on the bridge of a damaged Continuance-class vessel, watching repair drones swarm across shattered plating. "We didn't win," Rin said beside him. "No," Shale agreed. "We didn't vanish." The human voice opened a private channel moments later. "You are changing faster than expected," it said. Shale did not respond immediately. "You expected us to fail." "Yes." "And if we had?" Shale asked. "We would have intervened," the human replied. "And you would have learned nothing." Shale exhaled slowly. "There are more of them." "Yes." "And you cannot be everywhere," Shale said. "No." Shale's eyes hardened. "Then why stay?" Another pause. "Because eventually," the human said, "something will arrive that does not consume. It replaces." Shale felt the weight of the words. "And when it does?" "We will not face it alone," the human replied. "Not again." "Again?" Shale asked. The channel remained silent just long enough to feel intentional. "We have survived extinction-level encounters before," the human finally said. "We learn what isolation costs." Shale absorbed that quietly. "And now we build networks that fail slowly," the human said. "Together, if you choose." Shale looked out at the stars, at a Dominion no longer pristine, no longer confident in its superiority, but alive. "I think," he said carefully, "we already have." The Resolute began to move for the first time since its arrival, drifting away from the system's core toward the outer dark. "Where are you going?" Shale asked. "To where we are needed," the human replied, "and where we are not." The channel closed. Shale watched the massive ship recede, its presence diminishing not through disappearance, but distance. For the first time, he understood something fundamental. The humans were not guardians. They were survivors who refused to be alone again, and the galaxy, vast and indifferent, was beginning to reorganize around that simple, dangerous idea. The galaxy did not announce a shift. There were no declarations, no grand councils proclaiming a new era. Change arrived the way it always did, quietly through altered behavior. Trade routes adjusted first. Civilian convoys began traveling in dispersed formations rather than neat lines. Navigation algorithms favored unpredictability over efficiency. Even species that had never fought a war began hardening their infrastructure, burying power systems beneath cities, duplicating food production in locations no map openly recorded. They had watched the Dominion survive. They had understood the lesson. Shale noticed it during a routine diplomatic transmission. The envoy from the Letheri Compact spoke politely, formally, yet their words carried something new. "We are restructuring our defense philosophy," the envoy said. "Redundancy over elegance." Shale inclined his head. "That was once considered weakness." "It still is," the envoy replied, "but it is no longer fatal. Within the Dominion, doctrine evolved faster than culture. Older admirals resisted the changes, clinging to centuries of tradition that had defined victory as annihilation rather than survival. One such admiral confronted Shale directly. "This path erodes who we are," Admiral Korvac said, his crest rigid with disapproval. "We were forged as conquerors, not caretakers of damaged systems." Shale did not argue immediately. He gestured toward the tactical display, where projections showed multiple possible futures branching outward. "In 83% of scenarios," Shale said calmly, "your doctrine ends with extinction." Korvac's mandibles tightened. "And the remaining? Temporary dominance," Shale replied, "followed by extinction." Silence stretched between them. Korvac finally spoke. "And this new way?" Shale met his gaze. "No scenario guarantees survival, but more of them allow it." Korvac turned away without another word. 3 cycles later, he requested reassignment to a continuance class task group. The replacement threat arrived sooner than anticipated. It did not consume systems. It rewrote them. Sensors failed not by overload, but by compliance. Data streams reported stability even as stars dimmed and orbital mechanics subtly shifted. Colonies did not vanish. They changed. Populations remained alive, functioning, unaware that anything fundamental had altered until they tried to leave. Ships attempting to exit affected regions found themselves looping back to their point of origin, navigation insisting they had traveled successfully despite unchanging star fields. The humans identified it first. "This is not predation," the human voice said during the emergency council. "It's optimization." "Optimization for what?" Merritt demanded. "For permanence," the human replied. "For a system state that no longer allows deviation." Shale felt a chill ripple through his neural lattice. "Control without destruction." "Yes," the human said. "The most efficient conquest." The entity did not announce itself. It did not negotiate. It simply expanded, its influence invisible until escape became impossible. "This is what follows consumption," the human continued. "Stability without freedom, order without choice." Dominion fleets approached the affected region cautiously. Weapons had no clear target. Energy readings remained within normal parameters. The stars themselves appeared calm. Too calm. A single probe was sent forward. It never returned, yet reported constant telemetry until its signal faded into background noise. It absorbed the probe? Wren asked. "No," Shale said slowly. "It accepted it." Human vessels arrived shortly after, smaller than the Resolute, but numerous, forming a loose perimeter around the anomaly. "We can disrupt it," the human voice said, "but not alone." "What does it require?" Shale asked. "Chaos," the human replied. "Real chaos, not destruction. Inconsistency." The Dominion had spent millennia eliminating inconsistency. Now it was required. Civilian networks were deliberately scrambled. Standardized command hierarchies dissolved into autonomous cells. Even human fleets fragmented, each unit operating on slightly divergent parameters. The entity reacted immediately. Regions stabilized faster, tightened their control, compensating for deviations. "Too predictable," the human said. Shale understood. "Then we stopped trying to coordinate," he ordered. "What?" Merritt stared at him. "That risks collapse." "Yes," Shale replied. "That is the point." For the first time in Dominion history, fleets were ordered to act without shared objectives. Captains made decisions based on local information, personal judgment, incomplete data. It was terrifying and effective. The entity's optimization routine struggled. Systems designed to converge could not resolve conflicting inputs. Stability wavered. Human ships exploited the fractures, introducing physical disruption only where necessary, never enough to allow the entity to reestablish equilibrium. For cycles, the conflict resembled nothing the galaxy recognized as war. No fronts, no victories, only resistance. Gradually, the region loosened its grip. Colonies regained navigational variance. Stars resumed natural fluctuation. The entity withdrew, not destroyed, but unable to maintain coherence. Afterward, no one celebrated. They simply breathed. Shale addressed the council in the aftermath. "We did not defeat it," he said. "We proved it cannot own us." The human voice spoke privately later. You adapted, it said, faster than expected. Shale considered that. So did you? Yes, the human replied. We used to destroy what we didn't understand. And now, Shale asked, now we survive it, the human said. Together, Shale looked at the tactical logs, at the chaotic patterns that had saved entire systems. Will there be more, he asked. Yes. And will we be ready? Shale pressed. The human paused. Readiness is a myth, but willingness isn't. The channel closed. Shale stood alone, gazing into a galaxy that no longer revolved around singular powers or perfect designs. It revolved around adaptability, around species willing to abandon certainty, around civilizations that understood survival was not about being strongest, fastest, or most advanced. It was about refusing to become static. And somewhere in the dark, threats watched, learned, recalculated. So, did they? After the withdrawal of the stabilizing entity, the galaxy entered a period historians would later call the quiet fracture. It was not peaceful. It was cautious. Borders remained intact, but assumptions did not. Every major power reviewed doctrines older than their oldest leaders. Every minor polity began planning for threats no one could yet name. The Dominion changed its academies first. Cadets were no longer taught optimal solutions. They were taught competing ones. Instructors deliberately contradicted each other. Simulations rewarded improvisation over correctness. Failure was not punished if it produced survivable outcomes. You will graduate confused, Shale told the first cohort. That is intentional. Some resigned within cycles. Those who remained became something new. Marith, now overseeing interstellar logistics, noticed another shift. Civilian populations were adapting faster than military structures ever had. Independent energy grids formed spontaneously. Local defense militias trained without central approval. Information networks became resilient through redundancy rather than control. Fear had not paralyzed them. It had educated them. The humans did not remain visible during this period. Their fleets dispersed beyond major routes, appearing only briefly when anomalies surfaced, then vanishing again. No territory bore their mark. No system flew their banners. Yet their influence was unmistakable. A trader from the virile expanse summarized it best during an open forum. They don't rule, the trader said. They leave instructions. Shale received a private transmission weeks later. The human voice sounded different, quieter, older. There's something you should know, it said. Shale straightened. Go on. We are not as numerous as you believe, the human said. Shale had suspected as much. Define numerous. A pause. There are fewer of us than most of your core world's populations. Shale felt a subtle tightening in his chest. Yet you act everywhere. Yes, the human replied, because we learned long ago that concentration invites extinction. From whom? Shale asked. Another pause, longer this time. From ourselves, the human said. Shale did not interrupt. We reached a point once where our conflicts nearly erased us. The human continued, not through external threat, but internal certainty. Everyone was sure they were right. And you survived, Shale said. Barely, the human replied. That is why we no longer build empires. Shale absorbed that quietly. Then what are you building? Buffers, the human said, between chaos and order, between extinction and stagnation. Shale considered the galaxy as it now existed. Fragmented, adaptive, uneasy. It seems fragile, he said. It is, the human agreed. That's why it lasts. The next anomaly emerged at the galactic periphery, far from established lanes. It was subtle at first. Stars dimmed irregularly. Time dilation fluctuated without pattern. Automated probes returned contradictory data, sometimes from the future, sometimes not at all. This one doesn't want stability, Rin observed. It wants variance. Human analysis confirmed it. It feeds on unpredictability, the voice said, on uncontrolled change. Shale frowned. Then our new doctrine empowers it. Yes. Silence followed. Every adaptation creates its opposite, the human continued. There is no perfect posture. So what do we do? Meredith asked. The human response was immediate. We constrain ourselves. The idea was met with resistance. You want us to reintroduce rigidity? Korvac demanded during the council. After everything we learned? No, Shale said carefully. We introduce limits. Human and Dominion planners collaborated openly this time. Systems were designed with controlled unpredictability, bounded chaos, freedom within frames, variation without collapse. The entity responded, drawn to the noise, then weakened as patterns reemerged. It recoiled, not destroyed, denied. Shale watched the starfield normalize, feeling neither triumph nor relief. This never ends, Rin said quietly. No, Shale agreed. It balances. The human voice returned one final time before withdrawing again. You are no longer students, it said. You are participants. Shale hesitated. Will you ever stop intervening? Yes, the human replied. When the galaxy no longer needs examples, and if it never reaches that point. Shale asked, then we will keep moving, the human said, and teaching. The channel closed. Years later, young Dominion cadets would study the era not as a rise of humans, but as the moment the galaxy abandoned the illusion of permanence. They would learn that the first glimpse of a human battleship had not revealed a weapon. It had revealed a philosophy. That survival was not about domination. That strength was not found in purity of design. That destruction became clear not because humans arrived, but because the galaxy finally understood what refusing to change truly meant. And so the stars continued to burn, imperfectly, unpredictably, alive. The quiet fracture did not heal. It matured. Civilization stopped asking how long peace would last and began asking how failure could be survived. That single shift altered priorities across the spiral arms. Where once empires invested in monuments and megastructures meant to endure forever, they now built systems designed to fall apart gracefully. Shale saw it during an inspection of the Dominion core. The capital world still gleamed, but beneath the surface, nothing was singular anymore. Power flowed through layered grids. Governance operated through overlapping councils. Even cultural archives were distributed across thousands of independent repositories. It felt unfinished, and that made it safe. Meredith joined Shale at the observation platform overlooking the planetary arcologies. We used to believe cohesion was strength. Shale nodded. Now we know it was exposure. Not all species adapted willingly. Beyond the Dominion's influence, an old empire known as the Keth Assembly rejected the new philosophy entirely. Their leadership denounced fragmentation as weakness and reaffirmed absolute centralization. Their fleets grew immaculate once more. Perfect symmetry, unified command, total control. They're making themselves a beacon, Rin warned. Yes, Shale agreed, and beacons attract things. The warning came too late. The anomaly did not resemble previous threats. There was no distortion of space, no energy spike, no visible presence. Keth systems simply began to agree with one another too well. Every sensor reported optimal function. Every citizen complied without dissent. Crime vanished. Conflict ended. Productivity reached theoretical maximums. And then innovation stopped. Human observers were the first to sound alarm. This is cognitive convergence, the human voice said. A collapse of variance. Are they under attack? Meredith asked. Yes, the human replied. They just don't know it. The Keth Assembly dismissed all concerns. Their envoys spoke proudly of unity achieved at last. We have eliminated inefficiency, their speaker announced to the council. We have perfected ourselves. Shale felt a familiar chill. Nothing that calls itself perfect survives contact with reality. Within cycles, Keth expansion stalled completely. Fleets stopped responding to novel stimuli. When a minor stellar flare disrupted a core system, the assembly failed to adapt. Their algorithms searched for precedent. There was none. A single disrupted system cascaded. Entire command structures froze, unable to resolve the contradiction between optimal state and unexpected input. By the time the Dominion dispatched aid, it was already over. not destroyed. Locked. Keth worlds remained intact, their populations alive but functionally static. No ships launched. No signals left their borders. They become a museum, Rin said softly. Shale corrected him. A warning. The galaxy absorbed the lesson quickly. Uniformity became suspect. Consensus required friction. Even cultural practices shifted. Festivals were encouraged to evolve annually. Language protocols allowed drift. Education systems taught conflicting models side by side. The humans never claimed credit. They never needed to. Shale met the human representative one final time, in a region deliberately chosen for its instability. Stars here burn unevenly. Navigation required constant recalibration. "You're leaving again," Shale said. "Yes," the human replied. "For good?" Shale asked. "No," the human said. "For now." Shale studied the human silhouette on the projection. "Will we become like you?" The human considered. "No." "Why not?" Shale pressed. "Because you are not running from the same ghosts," the human replied. "You're building something new." "And you?" Shale asked. "We keep moving," the human said. "So stagnation never catches us." Shale inclined his head. "Then this is farewell. For this configuration." The human agreed. "Not for the pattern." The transmission ended. Time passed. Threats continued to emerge, each different, each revealing another flaw in assumed permanence. But now, no single failure defined the galaxy's fate. Damage localized. Recovery followed. Adaptation spread. Children grew up learning that survival was not heroic. It was practical. Shale aged, his once bright crest dimming with years. From his final office, he reviewed reports not of wars won, but crises endured. He found that comforting. On his last day of service, he recorded a message for future strategists. "We once believed destruction was announced by weapons," he said, "by fleets in fire and force." He paused. "Now we know it arrives quietly, in certainty, in systems that cannot bend." He ended the recording and gazed at the stars one last time. Somewhere out there, humans moved to the dark, unseen, unclaimed, refusing to settle. And across the galaxy, countless species continue to change, imperfectly, endlessly. That was a legacy of the first glimpse of a human battleship. Not fear, not awe, but the understanding that survival belonged to those willing to remain unfinished. Long after Shale's message was archived, the galaxy continued its slow, uneven motion. No single event marked the end of the age that followed. There was no final war, no universal treaty, no moment historians could point to and declare resolution. Instead, there was continuity, imperfect and persistent. The Dominion no longer stood at the center of anything. It did not need to. Influence now moved through behavior rather than authority. When a system rebuilt after collapse without demanding dominance, others noticed. When a species abandoned rigid doctrine and survived, observers learned. The absence of humans became as instructive as their presence once had been. Young strategists studied the records obsessively, searching for hidden blueprints, secret technologies, undisclosed weapons. They found none. The human fleets had left behind no schematics worth copying. Their designs, when examined, appeared contradictory, wasteful, inefficient by every classical metric. That was the point. What endured were fragments of philosophy, embedded in training manuals, cultural norms, emergency protocols. No one called them human doctrines anymore. They were simply best practices. Never centralize what can be distributed. Never perfect what must adapt. Never assume survival is owed. The galaxy learned to fail in pieces. Civilizations that once would have shattered now bent. Systems collapsed locally, recovered regionally, stabilized globally. When stars went dark, life moved. When networks failed, alternatives surfaced. Collapse became an event, not an ending. There were still losses. Entire worlds vanished to anomalies no one understood. Species disappeared quietly, not with screams, but with silence. The galaxy mourned them differently now, not as inevitable casualties of cosmic cruelty, but as reminders that adaptation was not guaranteed. Even unfinished systems could fall. Yet hope persisted, stripped of arrogance. Decades passed, then centuries. The stories of the first human battleship shifted in tone. Early retellings emphasized fear, awe, destruction narrowly avoided. Later versions focus on restraint, on what the ship did not do. Eventually, storytellers stopped describing the ship at all. They spoke instead of the moment when uncertainty cracked. A young cadet on a frontier world asked an instructor once, "Were the humans the strongest?" The instructor considered the question carefully. "Strong enough," they replied, "but that's not why they mattered." "Then why?" the cadet pressed. "Because they refused to stay," the instructor said, "and refused to rule." That answer frustrated many. It did not promise safety. It did not offer supremacy. It offered responsibility. Somewhere far beyond map space, human vessels continued to drift. They intervened rarely now, only when imbalance threatened to become absolute. Sometimes they arrived too late. Sometimes they chose not to arrive at all. Those decisions haunted them. They were not saviors. They never claimed to be. One human archive, released long after Quiet Fracture, contained a simple internal directive written during an age of desperation. Never let the galaxy depend on us. Never let ourselves become necessary, because necessity hardens into tyranny. That directive shaped everything that followed. And so, the humans faded into myth, then into footnotes, then into patterns others carried forward unconsciously. The galaxy did not become safer. It became wiser in its fear. On a reconstructed world near the former Keth assembly border, a monument stood in a public square. It did not depict ships or warriors or leaders. It was unfinished stone, deliberately asymmetrical, its surface changing every cycle as local artists reshaped it. At its base, an inscription read, "Survival is not perfection." Children played around it, unaware of its meaning. They would learn later, when the galaxy demanded it of them. Far away, in a region where stars burned unevenly and navigation remained unreliable, a small fleet altered course. No one noticed. No one needed to. The galaxy no longer waited for heroes. It waited for responses. And when the next unknown emerged, as it always would, it did not face a single empire, a unified doctrine, or a perfect defense. It faced a living, shifting, unfinished network of civilizations that had learned the hardest lesson of all. That destruction becomes clear not when weapons appear, but when change stops. And this time, the galaxy kept moving.